Hey everybody, welcome to Neil Talks. My name's Neil and it's time to talk The Sandman. Really great, in my opinion, premiere episode that came out on Friday, and I am ready to jump into the next episode. I think we did a really good job of translating this iconic, epic comic book to the screen, but being smart enough to modify that adaptation where it makes sense, where it can be improved. In a weird way, this first run of the Sandman, the first 8 issues, the first 6 episodes are, well, so central to the story, perhaps the least typical of the 75 issue run. They're the darkest, the ones that go most into horror as opposed to dark fantasy. They're the ones most intertwined with the DC comic universe. There's cameos by Batman and Martian Manhunter and Scott Free and Dr. Destiny, and we separate from that as the story progresses. But this is where the story starts, and so this is where the show starts, and I'm very interested to see what modifications may happen to the story so that as we jump around from time to time, from world to world, from with new characters jumping in and out of the story all the time, the only through line is Dream himself. It's going to be very interesting to see how this is all woven together to appeal to a larger television audience. And I'm really encouraged by that first episode. I feel like they found a really good tone. It was mystical and it was dark, but it wasn't inaccessible. It felt approachable for a new audience. And it's tough for me to say because this story is so ingrained as part of me, but I would love to hear from those of you who are watching this show for the very first time, what your thoughts were, what you feel about the show, where you think it may be going. And I love the idea of this story reaching a whole new audience 30 plus years after it first hit the comic book page. I have a pretty good idea about what this episode's about, but that's not for me to share right now. Let's jump into it. This is going to be awesome. This is episode 2, Imperfect Hosts. Sorry, I should say chapter 2, Imperfect Hosts. I love how they're playing with the lenses and letting the image actually warp on screen with these simulated fisheye shots almost. It just sort of adds to that lack of solidity to the dreaming.
I kept a journal for a while. A chronicle of everything that happened in your absence.
Lucien's the best.
Sometime after you left, all the books in the library became bound volumes of blank paper. The next day, the whole library was gone. I never found it again.
And yet you remained.
I knew you would return.
They chose my favorite aspect of the throne room here. The remnants, as it stands right now, come from much later in the series, and it's it's my favorite looking version of his throne room. Because it's the dreaming, it's constantly shifting and changing. So it looks different throughout the entire run. But obviously a production team can't do that, so they have to pick a look and stick with it. And I believe this look is from the Kind ones, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, he's weak.
Perhaps a bit more rest, and then you'll be back at full strength.
Needs his tools.
They were taken from me. I know not where, nor what I am without them.
Darling, how are you?
Quite the place you got here, Ethel.
Who are you?
You've done a very good job of convincing people Ethel Cripps doesn't exist.
She's staying very young.
You're one of his?
I'm my own man now. And with your help, I intend to stay that way. He's out of his cage and he's coming for us.
I never did anything to him.
Oh, you did though, Ethel. You stole from him.
Perhaps just this once you could ask one of your siblings for help. Tell them what happened to you.
I am quite sure they know what happened to me. And not one of them came to my aid.
The fates aren't cheap, you know.
This is a show about family.
I cannot muster power enough to summon them. Is there anything of mine that remains in the dreaming? Something I can absorb?
There is one thing.
Oh, awesome. Cain and Abel and Gregory the Gargoyle.
Gregory!
And Nassim Chowdhury, man. Love it.
Cain! Abel.
The House of Mysteries and the House of Secrets.
Come in, my lord. And you, Lucian, to the House of Mystery.
Or to the House of Secrets. I have tea.
I have tea and biscuit.
I must take back a gift I gave you long ago.
Gregory?
The answer is no.
I have not come here to ask you. I've come to ask Gregory.
Oh my god, this is so much more painful than the comic. He just took their, like, letters of commission. This is so much more painful. He's just a big puppy.
Not fair.
No, it's not.
Oh man. Oh, this sucks.
You have served this kingdom with great honor. You will be missed.
No, we hardly knew him, but man, oh, that sucks. Getting his strength back. He's got a long way to go, though.
Good luck, my lord.
Simpering suck-up.
Yeah. Wasim Chowdhury's gonna die a lot in this show.
Dreams, tools. He's gonna want them. I can show you how to use them. Make him go away for good this time.
You want me to kill the King of Dreams? I don't have them.
Wonder if your son knows where they are. What do you think Dream will do to the son of Roderick Burgess?
Since one meets the fates at a crossroads, I find one in the dreams of a Cambodian farmer.
This is such an awesome interpretation, and this is like straight from the pages.
Open my eyes and see what the fates require.
Great shot.
Now it is up to the fates.
That egg.
He wants something.
You have found me out.
Mother, maiden, and crone.
You may ask us 3 questions.
I had a leather pouch filled with sand. Where is it?
Last purchased by a magic user called Joanna Constantine.
My helm. What happened to it?
Traded away to a demon for the amulet of protection.
My ruby. Who holds it now?
Passed from a mother to a son.
Where are they now?
You have asked your questions!
Ah! Oh, well. We just set up our story for the next handful of episodes. I will do my best to call her Joanna Constantine, but for the last 30 years in my head it's been Constantine, so I apologize in advance if I slip. Abel lives.
Do you think that the only way a woman can be successful is by using magic? Supernatural and sexist. You really are a nightmare, aren't you?
Come on. You're lying, Ethel. You don't have to lie. In fact, you don't have to say a word. Your eyes will tell me everything.
I don't need dreams tools. I have my own.
So this amulet of protection. It seems to do its job.
Who gave you an egg?
You did.
I didn't give you an egg. Why would I give you an egg?
It's an apology for murdering me.
When have I ever apologized for murdering you?
Oh, it's hatching quick.
It's a baby gargoyle.
He's rather cute, isn't
He's adorable.
I
He looks
think
just
I'll
like
call
he
him
does in the comics.
Irving.
Gargoyle names always begin with a G.
Gerving.
Curving.
Gerving.
It starts with a G. Goldie. Goldie's.
He's gonna die a lot in this show. Somehow murder becomes a running gag in the Sandman. Where are we? She's Miss D. Is this where I think it is? Is this a high-tech version of Arkham?
Hello, Johnny. We need to talk about the ruby.
I'll call you Goldie for Kane's sake, but I think of you as Irving, really, in my heart. It's who we are. The first murderer, the first victim. It's a story about two brothers who loved each other very, very much. And they were very nice to each other. Nice and kind and brotherly, you know? And the elder brother never harmed the younger brother, ever.
Will you grant me one favor before you go? Take a raven with you.
No more ravens. I do not need a minder.
No, you need a friend.
If this Constantine is anything like her ancestor, she will serve me well enough. She is only human.
As was Roderick Burgess.
Corinthian? Is this where he got sent? That's what the Ring of Protection, the Amulet of Protection does.
And just in time, too. His lordship will be pleased.
He's out there looking for his tools, isn't he?
Nightmares do not belong in the waking world.
Oh, it turns out I fit right in.
He will come after you.
Well, then if he does, he won't be coming back either. Can't change him. Can't save him either.
Oh, awesome. Definitely some changes from the books, and I appreciate that. I dig it, because it makes the show new for me. We got to meet Cain and Abel. They're like classic characters from the book. Neil Gaiman actually took them from horror comics from the 50s or 60s, I believe. House of Secrets and House of Mysteries. I think that's what those comics were actually called. They were DC properties that were not being used, and so he incorporated them into the Sandman, and they became these brothers that continually are the first victim and the first murderer, and Kate is constantly killing Abel as they live as neighbors. It's a really cool brotherly dynamic. This whole show is about siblings, primarily about the Endless. We're going to meet some more of them as the show progresses, but you see it in other places, and Cain and Abel is certainly another example of that dysfunctional sibling dynamic that is so prevalent in this show. We're spending a lot more time that all the stuff with the Corinthian and Ethel Cripps in this episode is brand new, which I love. Ethel was not a major character in the comics, and now she's a lot more proactive. The Corinthian is way more proactive in this. He's actively trying to destroy Dream, prevent Dream from getting his items of power, and that just sort of raises the stakes so much, as opposed to just going on a scavenger hunt, finding the sand, finding the helm, finding the ruby. Now, granted, each of those is going to come with its own adventure, and we'll take those as they come over the coming episodes. But adding an active antagonist like the Corinthian to the mix is just going to make it more interesting and more difficult. What really caught me by surprise this episode was that Dream needed the sacrifice of Gregory. He had to destroy Gregory to just gain enough power to call the three, the Hecate, the mother, the maid, and the crone, so that he could get some answers about where to find his items of power. And that's not how it happened. It was much less dramatic in the comics. The brothers each have a letter of commission that Dream gave them when they first became residents of the Dreaming, and he just asks for those back, and that's enough to give him enough power to take the next step. But here we actually had to take a life, that of this adorable gargoyle. The 3D animation on both the gargoyles I'm loving. Gregory was just this big old adorable puppy, and now we've got this tiny little Goldie that just speaks and meeps. And my heart's a little broken because Gregory appeared throughout the comic run, but there was a decision made to end his run early here, and I'm going to reserve judgment on that until we get further in, and until we get to a point where I'm like, man, I'm really missing him, or deciding that I don't miss him. It'll be really interesting, but we may not come to that realization until, crossing fingers, season 3 or 4 of this show. I am so impressed with the visuals of this show right now. The first few episodes, I feel like they've done a really good job. The dreaming is such. This is why, for the longest time, I think real fans of the show real fans of the comic thought that this was a property that just couldn't be translated to screen. Because how do you film a realm like the Dreaming that is so nebulous, that's so ever changing, that is concrete one minute and ethereal the next? How do you show these transitions, as Dream goes from one realm to another? The sequence from the premiere, where Jessamy was flying through the dreams of the guy from the Royal Museum in the back of his car in 1916, and every banking turn took us from one set to another, but the way it flowed, the way our perspective kept being distorted and flipped, and they're creating a really interesting visual language here, stuff that we're not used to seeing in big budget productions. We're seeing lens distortion on the screen as we sort of pan up and down on these really wide angle lenses, and you actually see the horizon, start curved this way and end curved this way, or vice versa. These are artifacts of photography, but they also make the world feel flexible, malleable, bendable, like unsolid, which is exactly what the Dreaming is. As strong as it is, and as everlasting as it is not fixed. It is not static. It's constantly shifting and bending and changing. And yeah, I think they found some really interesting techniques to translate that to the screen, just making the viewer feel a little bit off kilter, unbalanced, unsettled, disoriented. I'm really digging what they're doing visually on the show. Dream himself is such an interesting character because he's so walled off. in a very real sense, that prison that he was in for 106 years is very much like his personality. He doesn't ask for help. He doesn't reach out. He's content within himself. I mean, well, content is the wrong word. He would rather stay within than show weakness and communicate. Lucien asks, "Why don't you ask one of your siblings for help now?" And he's like, "Well, because none of them helped me." But someone has to start that dialogue, and it's never going to be Dream, at least this version of Dream. And so much of this show is just about his evolution. Like, we think of characters that are endless, like they are literally endless characters. They're greater than gods. Gods live and die. Gods are dreamed up, and they die when their believers are gone. The endless endure forever, and not technically forever, but for all intents and purposes, forever. And we think of characters like that as unchanging, as static, as the world is just a plaything, and there are no ramifications, no repercussions, so they're callous and uncaring. But this story rather, will, I hope, demonstrate that these beings can change and can evolve. That's a really interesting idea and a really interesting evolution, and it's a very human story, even though these are such inhuman characters. Neil Gaiman's fantasy is so mundane. It's grounded in the real world. It's deeply fantastical, but then it connects with normal humans and normal society. And I think as we get into the coming episodes, we're going to see more and more of that. And we'll intersperse that with trips to hell and other dimensions and the nightmare realm and all sorts of crazy stuff. But the real world is very much part of this show. I encourage you to stick with it. I encourage you to be patient with it, because it's such a rich world, and there's so many characters, and there's so much here to enjoy. I just hope people give this show a chance. That's kind of what I'm getting, and not because the first episodes are weak, just because it takes a little time for the story to become clear and for us to become invested. It's tough to care about a god, but I feel like the show is doing a really good job of laying the groundwork for that already. That's really encouraging for me. I call him a god, try not to do that. I'll call him one of the endless. I need to stop worrying about this show. It's incredibly well done. It's incredibly well performed. I really like the plotting and writing choices that they're making, ways that they've adapted the story, and I cannot wait to see how they continue to do that as the story gets stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm loving it so far. I'm so excited to finally talk about this show, to have a show to talk about. Can't wait to talk to you guys about the next episode in a few days. So until then, everybody, take care, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.